Hey there everyone, this is Jerbear the Third with another how-to video. This video is how to build a raid team. I'm going to systematically go through all the classes and explain what they bring to a raid team as a damage or support role. And I have a couple assumptions as I do this. 1, you're a raid lead wanting to build a successful raid team. Or 2, you just want to understand why people say things like you need a Sorkin group. This video will mostly go over class. In the description below, I've listed out some staple sets people use and why in raid teams. That isn't an exhaustive list, but it should be enough for almost all content. And you may or may not hear people say things like optimization. All this means is the raid team is trying to eke out every possible bit of support and damage from their raid group composition. People may refer to it as, let's say, the meta. This video will take a middle approach. There are undeniably needed things in your raid composition if you want to raid more seriously. There is also some freedom. Again, the purpose of this video is to provide the basic understanding of how to build a raid team and why those different pieces are needed. I hope it's helpful. Please drop any questions in the comments below. Thank you for watching. We'll start with my favorite class, the Nightblade. I have been a fan of Nightblade since the first time I started playing ESO. But in terms of what they can bring from a group utility perspective, they are not the greatest, unfortunately. They have two things going for them in terms of how they contribute to group composition. First, there is a passive called Hemorrhage underneath the Assassination skill line. When you deal critical damage, you and your group gain minor savagery, increasing your weapon critical by 1,320. There is no other class or skill that provides this buff. Unfortunately, savagery is only useful for stam groups. And if there's even one Nightblade in the group, you don't need multiple to make sure everyone has minor savagery. So you can have it on a DPS, a support, whatever. The other benefit is how quickly they build ultimate. The passive under Siphon Catalyst, whenever they drink a potion, they gain 20 ultimate. Also, when they cast a Siphon ability every 4 seconds, they gain 2 ultimate every time they do that. They can, however, output some nice damage, so if you're building up for a team, just keep in mind that on mag, they will be straight damage DPS most often. So, in summary, you only need one Nightblade in a group if you are a stam-based group for minor savagery, and again, that can be a DPS, healer, or tank. Second, they gain ultimate very quickly, and finally, you can also just rely on them to output good amounts of damage, if that is what you desire, and that pretty much sums up the Nightblade, so let's look at the next class. Next, we'll look at Templars. Templars bring needed aspects to both Magicka and Stamina groups, so you can expect to find at least one in any well thought out raid group. There are primarily two things that they bring to a raid composition. The first is Power of the Light. When you apply this to a target, it has Minor Fracture and Minor Breach, which reduces their physical and spell resistance by 1,320. This basically means your DPS can put an extra 7 to 8 CP somewhere else other than penetration. If you're in a Stam group, a Stamplar will naturally use this skill in their rotation. If you're in a Mag group, what most typically happens is there is a Templar healer or tank that would run Podle. Magplars use the other morph of this skill, which is why they wouldn't run it. The second thing that they bring to a raid group is pretty much for Magicka groups. This passive Illuminate, what it does is anytime there's a Dawn's Wrath ability cast, it gives minor sorcery to your entire group, and which that increases your spell damage by 10%. So in summary, Templars give Podle either as a Stam DPS or a support, and they provide minor sorcery to a Magicka group. Templars are also considered some heavy hitters in terms of DPS, so they can be useful in that way, similar to a Magblade. Next, we'll talk about Sorcerers. They will have a little more diversity going into the Stonethorn patch coming soon. They are useful primarily for Magicka groups, and will be useful in a minor way to Stamina groups come Stonethorn. Their main gift to a group is Minor Prophecy, The Exploitation passive here, found underneath the Dark Magic skill line, provides this buff. What that does is it gives increases spell critical by 1,320 for you and your group. Similar to the Nightblade giving a stam only useful minor buff, the Sorks do that for Magicka groups. There is no other class or skill that gives Minor Prophecy. And they can also provide Major Berserk to one other party member when they synergize the Atronach ultimate ability. Major Berserk increases damage done by 25%. The thing that changes in Stonethorn is they will have a skill called Crystal Shard that will cause a light attack or heavy attack to reduce target armor, spell and physical, by 1,000, which equates to roughly 4 to 5 CP freed up for DPS. This could be used in a Stam group on a Stam Sork or on a support, most likely on a tank, in Magicka or Stamina groups. So, in summary, Sorks give Minor Prophecy to Magicka groups, they can provide Major Berserk to one other party member, and in Stonethorn will provide a debuff of 1,000 armor to enemies. Next, we'll talk about Dragon Knights. This class is extremely diverse and useful for all group compositions. Similar to Templars, you'll find these in any well thought out raid group, Mag or Stam. First, for Stamina groups, the passive Mountain's Blessing, found under the Earth and Heart skill line, provides Minor Brutality to you and your group every time an Earth and Heart ability is cast. Minor Brutality increases weapon damage by 10%, which again only helps Stamina groups. There is no other class or skill that provides this, and it can come from a DPS and usually a tank. For Magicka groups, they provide Engulfing Flames, found under the Ardent Flame skill line. This scales with your spell damage, so you will almost always have a Mag DK use this skill as it is already a part of their rotation. Doing that would ensure the full benefit of what the skill does. An enemy with Engulfing Flames on it takes up to 10% more damage from all fire abilities. That comes out to quite a lot. And only DKs provide this debuff to enemies. Finally, DKs also have a skill called Stone Giant. Every stack of stagger, up to 3 stacks, means an enemy takes 65 more damage from everything. 3 stacks means they take 195 more damage from all abilities from everyone. That comes out to quite a lot. A Stam DK can use this skill, but it is primarily used on a tank, ensuring a DK will likely be one of your tanks. So, in summary, they provide Minor Brutality to Stam groups, Engulfing Flames to Magicka groups, and Stagger to all groups. Next, we have the Warden class. This class most often is considered for how it supports a group's defenses, which is why you will most often find them as a support. First, however, they do have the Fetcher ability, located under Animal Companions. This skill for Stam or Mag applies Minor Vulnerability, which increases the target's damage intake by 8%. There are other sources of Minor Vulnerability, but this is one that can be relied upon when you are keeping it up on your target. Next are their most prized additions to a group, the Maturation passive and the Expansive Cloak skill. Maturation is found under the Green Balance skill line, and what this skill does is when you heal yourself and an ally, you grant them Minor Toughness, which increases their max health by 10%. There are no other skills or classes that provide this. This is very useful for all groups. And Expansive Frost Cloak, found under Winter's Embrace. This is a morph of this first skill here. What this does is when it's cast, it grants Minor Resolve to you and your allies, which increases your physical and spell resistances by 5,280. Now, there are lots of sources of Major Resolve, but this is the only group buff of Major Resolve. In summary, Wardens can provide reliable Minor Vulnerability, Minor Toughness, and a group Major Resolve. Finally, we'll talk about Necromancers. The only thing Necromancers bring that nothing else can is Major Vulnerability. This comes from their ultimate ability found underneath the Gravelord skill line. Either morph of this ultimate will provide this. Major Vulnerability increases the target's damage intake by 30%. It is an invaluable group addition when considering trying to allow the group to output more damage. Necros can be DPS or support and will most often be using this ultimate as opposed to something else. You can guarantee the highest major vulnerability uptime by having 3 Necromancers in group. Anything more, you can diversify what ultimate is used, and anything less is also fine, but you'll likely have less major vulnerability uptime since this ultimate cost is fairly high. So, in summary, Necros give major vulnerability. That is every class available in ESO. I hope that this has been helpful to you as you're trying to think about how to build a raid team and how to utilize what people bring and how it can help the group. As you can see, every class has something to bring to a group. It just depends if it's for a STAM group, a MAG group, or if they're useful to any group, and how many you need, etc., etc. There's all these different factors that go into it, but hopefully this has been helpful to you again as you're trying to construct a team. Give me a like and a subscribe if this has been helpful to you. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.